Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I can see the participants list going up, so I'm just going to let that rise a little bit more. If I can just check that you can hear me, if you could just pop in the chat, that would be great as well. Perfect, thank you. So good afternoon or good morning or good evening from wherever you're dialing in from. Thank you for joining the session today. My name's Daniela. I'm one of the senior advisors in the MBA recruitment and admissions team. I'm also joined by Nabilah, who is part of our Oxford Said alumni community, and she was elected to be part of the Oxford Said Alumni Advisory Council in 2018. So if we can kind of give a warm virtual welcome to Nabilah. So what's really exciting about this session is that Nabilah is going to be giving us a real life insight into what it is like to be a Said Business School student. So I know a lot of the sessions this week have kind of focused a little bit more on the sort of academic side of things, whereas Nabilah's session is going to be really rich in terms of looking at the more kind of social and the really sort of exciting things you can get involved in at the school. So I really hope you enjoy the session. Just to do a little introduction to Nabilah. So Nabilah joined the school in 2016 and she was awarded the UK government's Chevening Scholarship to pursue her MBA, where she completed her studies and was awarded a distinction and was on the Dean's List for academic achievement. She currently works as a responsible business and public policy lead at Deloitte Africa, and she's also a chartered accountant of South Africa. She's very passionate about understanding the relationship between business and society and believes that purpose-driven corporates play a really critical role in driving positive social impact. So before I pass on to Nabilah, I firstly want to congratulate you all. It's been a very exciting week for you all, I'm sure, and I hope you've been able to join the series of events that we've been able to offer here as part of the MBA Experience event series. I hope you found them valuable, and I hope you've had a chance to connect with individuals and really sort of broaden your network and potentially connect with people that may be your peers in the incoming cohort. Also, I might add that Nabilah is sharing today what is a sort of perspective in a non-COVID world. So this is very pre-COVID. So it's something what you may have noticed throughout the week was that a lot of our sessions are really focused on looking at what it's going to be like, hopefully moving forward, but moving back into a space of what worked really well. So in terms of if there are questions around things like COVID and the curriculum and stuff like that, you might want to keep them for the 3 p.m. Q&A session. And also in terms of any sort of recruitment admission queries, they can also be kept for that session as well. If you'd like to ask any questions, if you could use the Q&A function at the bottom, that would be great. We're going to save some time at the end to go through them as well. If you missed out on any of our events, or if you want to catch up with any of them, we are sending out a recording of this session too. So I'm going to pass over to Nabilah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Daniela. I really appreciate it. And again, I will echo big congratulations to each and every one of you on receiving offers to join the Oxford MBA. It is a wonderful experience. And I'm hoping to take you through a little bit of what I experienced over the course of my MBA and perhaps give you a glimpse as to what could be to come. So let's jump right into it. So if I may, let me see, there we go. So Daniela gave you a little bit of an introduction as to who I am. Did my MBA in 2016. I was part of St. Hugh's College. So for those of you who have already been allocated into your colleges, you'd know that you sit in one of the 38 different colleges. I am South African by nationality and based in Johannesburg. So any of South Africans in the audience, big hi to you as well. And also to mention that I'm a member of the Oxford Alumni Advisory Council. So the AAC is essentially a group of individuals, there's 20 of us who represent the global Oxford Said alumni base. And we work with the school to advance matters from an alumni perspective. And yeah, and we work very closely with the alumni relations team. I'm serving my second term on the AAC, and it's been a fantastic way of keeping in touch with the school. So I thought I'd maybe just share that as well. So let's jump straight into it in terms of what this amazing Oxford MBA experience is about. I'm going to just reflect on the first time I walked in on our first day of the MBA. I was heading into the Oxford Said foyer, and it was a buzz with more than, I think we had nearly 330 different students across almost 60 different countries. So a huge diversity and array of people from across the board. And I absolutely loved that. It at first seems a little bit overwhelming, and you can see from the picture here that there were a lot of us. This picture was actually taken at the end of our launch week. And what I really appreciated about it, though, was that it was, the class has diversity, not just from a geographic perspective, coming from 60 different countries, but there was a huge amount of diversity of thought because of the different backgrounds that people came from. So there were people who had perhaps more traditional business backgrounds, like myself being an accountant, but we also had people coming from the medical profession, engineering, architecture, across the board, and it made for the most amazing experience, through the course of the MBA. So if 330 odd students seems like a lot and a bit overwhelming, there's no reason to fear, because we worked across sections. So we had 4 different sections within our MBA cohort. And the idea was, during the first 2 terms, that would be the Michaelmas and Hillary terms, we did our core courses with these different sections. So I was in section C, and it was really great because you had the opportunity to perhaps, as the first interaction, form deeper connections and, have your classes with this group of individuals. And that's where you would do your core courses around, case studies and that kind of a thing. I've included a picture on the right-hand side of what it's like to be sitting in a class, just to give you a sense of it. I know that you guys have been attending lectures through the week, but just to give you a sense of what it's like physically sitting in the room. What I really loved about the interaction as well was that, because there were so many different people from different parts of the world, the discussion was a rich tapestry of insights, honestly. I think about sitting in a strategy class, for example, where we were discussing a case study that was based in Russia, and we had a classmate who was from Russia who gave us insights that you wouldn't have been able to pick up from just reading the case study itself. So a lot of interactions like that really make for a wonderful discussion and a really robust education as well. Throughout the course of the MBA, you have multiple opportunities to work within groups. And I thought I'd feature 2 of the groups that I worked in. On the left-hand side is my study group sitting around the table. And I've got my entrepreneurship group, and I'll tell you about them in a moment. But the idea was that, through the MBA, you'll have multiple opportunities to work with different people, whether it's, an allocated group working on a group assignment, or other projects that you'll have the opportunity to work on during the year. So I really enjoyed working in my study group. We had a wide variety of people. So I'm just going to show you a little bit about where everyone came from. What I really enjoyed was that, because we all had such different backgrounds and such different perspectives, the end product of what we did was always that much more robust and that much more well thought through. And I learned a lot, in terms of like team dynamics and really just enjoying the environment that we were working in, because we had so many different perspectives. So the group on the right is my entrepreneurship project group. And we actually worked on a really interesting social entrepreneurship venture as part of our EP, our entrepreneurship project, on a female reproductive health clinic in South Africa, which was really awesome. And if you're wondering why we're all wearing pink, this was actually taken on our pitch day when we did our pitch to the panel for our entrepreneurship project, and it was called the Pink Bus. Hence, we're wearing touches of pink there. So as Daniela said, I'm not going to focus too much on the academic part of the course, because I know that you're going to get it from various different sources, and you've probably already had quite a bit of that. So I'll give you a bit of a perspective into what happens after class and outside of the class. So leaving the business school, you are absolutely spoiled for choice in terms of where you can study. And I thought it would be great to feature just the libraries in Oxford, because for me, this was one of the areas that I was most excited about. I was actually quite surprised to learn that there are over 100 libraries, if I'm not mistaken, in Oxford. And as an Oxford student, you have the opportunity to study in just about all of them, which is really wonderful. I thought I'd feature my favorite library, which is the Taylor Institute Library. This is the picture on the left here. In particular, I really like studying at the top window up here because it has a wonderful view of the Ashmolean Museum. So whilst you're doing an assignment, it's really wonderful to be able to have a view like that. And for those of you who are big Harry Potter fans, I thought I'd include a picture of the Duke Humphreys Library at the bottom here. And if it looks familiar, it's because some of the scenes from Harry Potter were actually filmed there. It's always a fun fact to throw in. And I think about the times, particularly sitting in a library like Duke Humphreys, where you're sitting in such an old library, but studying such contemporary work, like doing a business finance assignment whilst you're sitting in a library that's been standing for hundreds of years. And I think that really typifies what the Oxford MBA experience is like. You are learning cutting edge business principles within the Said Business School, but you are embedded within a wider university, being Oxford, which has been around for 900 years. And there's a wonderful interaction that comes through, in having both of these contrasts. And of course, in addition to all the studying that will happen, there's a lot of opportunities for social events. I really love the fact that, within our class, we were quite, we socialized a lot within our cohorts. With 330 odd people, it feels like every time you left your accommodation and you went off to the shops or just went for a walk, you'll always pass someone, from the class. And that was always really wonderful because it feels like Oxford is a little city of your friends, which is wonderful. And I think the thing I really enjoyed was the fact that despite everyone coming from such varying backgrounds and such different geographies, we were all sort of connected by a common thread of coming to the business school because you have bold and audacious dreams. If, as corny as it sounds, everyone wants to change the world, and many people do. And connected by that common purpose, you form some really deep and rich relationships with the people in the class. And that was a very big part of the experience. And I love the fact that, we could just drop a message on our class chat group and literally within 10 minutes, you could get like up to 15 people joining you on an activity. So really, really wonderful part of the MBA experience is the actual class and, that kind of interaction. And for those of you who are into sport, I thought I'd maybe share a couple of pictures of, there's tons of sporting opportunities available and many clubs that you can join. Those of you who are familiar with rowing, you might be aware of, well, there's a very big rowing culture in Oxford, but in particular, the Oxford-Cambridge boat race is quite a big event on the calendar of the university. And I remember in our year, we had a couple of classmates who were actually on the rowing team, and we had a chance to cheer them on in London, which was really wonderful. Personally, I decided to try my hand at croquet and had a lot of fun in the process, which is the picture on the right here. It's a wonderful way of spending a lazy Saturday afternoon if you aren't being pulled into one of the many different directions of activities that I'll share a little bit more about in a moment. But yeah, just a wonderful way of connecting with friends as well. So it would be completely remiss of me to not speak about the formal dinners. This is a very big part of the Oxford culture and tradition. On any given evening, you might find at a college that there would be a formal dinner happening. Really, and it seems as elaborate as it seems here, that's really what it's like, being able to sit in these beautiful halls and enjoy a dinner at your college. What I really enjoyed about the formal dinner experience was that, you have the opportunity to interact with people outside of just the business school because it takes place in the colleges. And I mean, there were a number of occasions where I sat next to someone who was doing, for example, a DPhil in zoology and, have the most interesting conversation about a topic that you might not have any exposure to, but you learn so much about. Really a rich culture of engagement and conversation and interaction through that experience. In our year, we also had a wonderful, we formed an Oxford Said dining club where we basically had the opportunity to invite our friends to join us in college dinners, because the idea is that within your college, you will have the opportunity to attend formal dinners and then you can bring along, you can invite someone to join you. And so through that little network that we formed, you had the opportunity to go to multiple different college dinners and experience what it was like. Really enjoyable. And of course, you know, I know you probably would have seen through the course of the week that the academic course on the Oxford MBA is rigorous, as you would expect it to be. But as hard as you work, you will play hard as well. And so there's loads of opportunities to be able to let your hair down and, you know, enjoy a bit of fun with your classmates. We had loads of fun over things like our Christmas party, a very big Halloween celebration you'll see at the bottom. We actually had some of our professors actually dressed up for Halloween, I remember. And so we had classes with, I remember having a pirate teaching us strategy at one point during the Halloween season. And probably the events that I enjoyed the most were the cultural events. Like, for example, we had a Japanese food event where some of our classmates from Japan actually cooked for us. And you got to taste authentic Japanese food and learn a little bit about the culture. And for me, that really speaks to the sort of rich outside of classroom education that you can get when you are around people who have so many different perspectives, and just being able to embrace that diversity. One of the other events that was really a lot of fun during our year was the Diwali celebration. In fact, we had a dance-off across the 4 sections, and the picture at the bottom is the winning section, Section B, that did a fantastic choreographed dance. But really, events like this brought everyone together and was another opportunity to learn about, a new culture and really just having fun with your classmates. I know a lot of people talk about the Oxford Ball. So for those of you who are wondering what it's about, I thought I'd maybe just include a picture or two. But the Oxford Balls are essentially giant parties that are thrown by the colleges. Again, you have the opportunity to join if you'd like. I really enjoyed, going to some of these events with our classmates as well as other people from our college. And again, just another opportunity to really have fun and outside of the academic rigor, let your hair down and enjoy yourself. So it would be really, it's not uncommon, I should rather say, to be walking down a street in Oxford and spotting someone who looks vaguely familiar, only to realize that they most likely are someone who's famous. So I thought I'd include a couple of the celebrities and famous people who we had a chance to interact with over the course of our MBA. I think my favorite picture is actually the one on the left here. It's my friend Akshay Dalal, my classmate, who had the great opportunity of meeting Sir Anthony Hopkins whilst they were filming Transformers in Oxford during our MBA. So that was really cool. As well as meeting, George Takei. I had the opportunity to meet Sir John Cleese. And this sort of interaction, these interactions are fairly common whilst you are there in Oxford, because Oxford as a place really is where great minds come together. So, we had Professor Stephen Hawking, who came across to speak to us at the Oxford Union, as well as Michael Bloomberg. And on any given week, you will be spoiled for choice in terms of, which speaker you want to listen to, or essentially where you want to be at any given point in time, because there's so much on offer. What I really loved was the fact that, you could be sitting in an analytics class and then 2 hours later be sitting in the front row of the Oxford Union and listening to someone speak like that. But also, have the opportunity to be a speaker yourself. And the picture that I have on the right is when I had the opportunity to speak at the Oxford Union, which was really wonderful, joining in a debate on responsible business for our MBA classmates. And really, for me, the Oxford Union in particular was a really great platform to engage in discussion and debate, but also hear speakers coming across, heads of state, people from various different areas. And it just augments the already rich education that you're getting at the university itself. I should also add that as a student of the, as an SBS student on the MBA, you get an automatic membership into the Oxford Union, if I'm not mistaken, which is really great. Oh, I want to talk about sub-FUSC because I know a lot of people, as they start searching about what to prepare for coming into the MBA, they hear about the sub-FUSC and they're like, what is it? It's a fancy Latin term which basically describes the academic dress that students wear. What's really great about it is you wear it for special occasions. So the first time that you wear your subfasc will be for your matriculation ceremony, which happens at the Sheldonian Theatre. And that's when you're officially entered onto the university register, which is a really elaborate ceremony that happens. So something to look forward to there. But you also wear your subfasc for the purposes of examinations. And I personally found this really interesting because, when I think about writing exams, the last thing I'm thinking about is what I'm going to be wearing. You're more worried about, sort of preparing for the actual paper. But it was a really wonderful tradition where, well, at least, and it's a requirement that you have to be dressed in full subfasc. It really elevates the experience of writing an exam when you're doing it in such wonderful attire. So yeah, the subfasc is essentially a white shirt. You'll have your black gown, black pants and a black skirt, or a black skirt, sorry. And that's why, if you're heading to Oxford during exam season or matriculation or degree ceremony season, you'll see like the marching of the penguins with everyone wearing their black and white outfits. I wanted to also mention, let me just take a sip of water. Another tradition that I wanted to mention was the wearing of the carnations. And I really enjoyed this during exam season. You'll see people walking around with bunches of carnations and wondering, what is that about? But essentially, for your first exam, you would wear a white carnation. For your middle exams, you wear pink carnations. And for your final exam, you'd wear a red carnation. And that's why you'd see this every so often with people wearing carnations as they write the exams. And of course, at the end of the exams, there's a wonderful tradition of being completely smothered in silly string and shaving cream and confetti, and a really great celebration to end a stressful period, I would imagine. The last time that you wear your subfasc is during your degree ceremony. And this is after you complete your MBA, you'll come back to Oxford, most likely in the next year, and formally receive your degree or have your degree conferred upon you. And this picture in particular is something that really resonates with me because I remember, when I applied for the MBA, I signed up for all the reasons that you probably articulated on your application as well. Like you want to get a world-class education and you want to get, be able to learn from leading thinkers and have this career development or personal development angle. And at the end of the MBA, you will get all of that. But what I didn't anticipate was also walking away with this amazing family of classmates, and have the opportunity to add them to my network. But beyond a network, it was about having a class of friends, so to speak. And since the MBA, I've had many opportunities to be part of wonderful events that my classmates had on. Like, I attended 2 weddings in India. We had a bunch of classmates coming across to South Africa for a wonderful trip through, and we did a safari, as you can see at the bottom. And so really, it's much broader than just the education that you'll get over the year. There's a lot that happens from a social perspective and a network perspective afterwards. I mean, right now, I think pretty much every week since completing my MBA, I have been in touch with someone from my class, either through, connecting over a chat or having, meetings or discussions with them, but really leaning into that network as a base of support, whether you can provide it or whether you're asking for it. It's always wonderful to just have that base of people. So I'm going to sort of end with this slide, this picture. And why this picture was particularly poignant for me was that I actually took this, I think it was in one of the first weeks when I got to Oxford. I was exploring, and this picture was taken in the quad of the Bodleian Library. You'll learn all about it once you're there. But I remember standing in the middle of the quad and sort of just being completely mesmerized by the beauty of the architecture around me. And something made me just look up, because there's a lot to see at eye level, but something just forced me to look up. And I saw this magnificent sky, as a backdrop against the Bodleian Library. And for me, it sort of taught me this lesson, which I carried with me throughout the MBA, is that, you should always look up in the literal sense, because Oxford is a beautiful city and it is the city of dreaming spires. So, there's always something amazing to look up to. but also in the figurative sense, that this experience is really what you make of it. It's up to you in terms of what you want to get out of it, because there's a lot that is on offer. And if you go into the experience with an open mind, see it as a journey of discovery for yourself, I think you would get a lot out of it. I sort of made a pact to myself right at the beginning that I was going to say yes more than I said no. And it absolutely served me well in terms of the kinds of experiences and perspectives that I was exposed to as a result of just sort of being open and really fully immersing yourself into the experience. So yeah, I hope that this little sneak peek was helpful, in terms of giving you a sense of what the experience is about, and yeah, really just making the most of it as you head into this wonderful, wonderful period. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nabilah. It was fantastic. It was super great to see all your photos, and it was so well put together. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone enjoyed that as much as I did.
Absolute pleasure.
So if you'd like to use the Q&A function for any questions that you may have, we'll leave it a couple of seconds just to get them coming in.
Great.
We have one question that's come in from Daridi. Thank you for your experience, Nabilah. Could you tell us more about the MBAT competition?
Yes, absolutely. So that's actually a great point, and probably something I should have mentioned when I spoke about the sport element. But MBATS is a fantastic, it's called the MBA tournament, which is kind of like a little mini Olympics for, I think it's mainly the European MBA schools. And a great opportunity to be able to, again, have an experience outside of the business school. But essentially, there's a delegation essentially that goes from Oxford MBA that joins other business schools. In our year, we had it at HEC Paris. I think it's still held there, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm very proud to say that in the year that we went, it was the first time that Oxford MBA won the MBAT Cup. And I'm given to believe that they've won it every year subsequently. So great to be able to see that. It's a really great experience, and I would highly encourage you, if it is available and it is running, over next year, definitely go for it. It's a wonderful experience, and you get a chance. You will travel to France, to be able to join the MBAT, and then really just get a chance to interact with other MBA students, which is always a great thing.
Oh, thank you for that. And another question come in from Desi. Can you give an example of how Oxford Alumni Network has helped you professionally?
Right. So, there's been so many different interactions. If I think about just, for example, on one end, just interacting with people through, for example, LinkedIn, and having people within your wider network, you have an exposure to so many different things like events or papers. I'm in the responsible business space, so I'm actively sort of, reaching out or looking into that network to be able to see what's the cutting edge of what's going on. But also just being able to directly interact with your classmates. So, I have classmates who are in similar spaces as myself, and being able to have conversations to see the kinds of things that they're doing, and I think about how I can apply it in the context of my work. That's always great. It's also fantastic to be able to rely on the network just for other networking purposes, so where you can, through a classmate, ask, I'm looking for someone, who has experience in XYZ, and if you reach out to the class, and someone will recommend a person, you just add that much more weight to that recommendation, knowing that it comes from that trusted network. And that happens on an ongoing basis. When I think about, the chats that we have on our class chats, often people reaching out, as well as for things like, supporting classmates and their businesses for competitions. We recently had a classmate who had, his startup was up for an award, and he reached out saying, would love to get your support as a class, and everyone voted, and that's the nature of the interaction, is that it's an ongoing one, and it's also about what you proactively do, give to the network, and then there's also, it's a sort of quid pro quo to some extent, which makes it a really enriching network to be a part of.
Well, thank you, Nabilah. And we also have another question from Iresh. What are the weekly schedules like in terms of classes and extracurriculars?
So there's no typical week, I would say. In fact, when I was looking at this presentation, I thought to myself, there's no such thing as a typical day and night in the life of an MBA because there's so much on offer. But typically, as far as possible, you would have classes starting usually around 8:30. And depending on which term you're in, your weeks might be fuller than others. So I remember in our year, we had quite a bit in the first two terms, particularly in Michaelmas, where you have the core courses, where you'd have full days on end. Whereas as we got to Trinity, when we had the opportunity to select electives, you didn't necessarily have a full day, depending on which elective courses you had. And so there was a bit more free time that you could work into your schedule. But I would certainly say that as far as possible, seize all the moments to be able to have this wide experience. So even if it's just your walk getting into the business school, if you see something interesting along the way, or heading home, go in and check it out, and just allow yourself to be able to experience the full realm of what Oxford has to offer. And the extracurriculars, you have time on the weekends in between, in your class day, or whilst you have classes, you might have gaps in between. And because Oxford is fairly small, you could go out and attend a talk or listen to someone, come back to the business school in time for classes, and so you'll juggle that. The one thing that I would say, it's probably the best bit of advice that I was given going into the MBA, and it was by Tammy Brophy, who's part of our Africa team, and she's amazing. But she told us that going into the MBA, it's less about managing your time and more about managing your energy. And that was probably the best bit of advice that I received, because there's just so much on offer. You have to prioritize and think about what you want to get out of the experience. So if networking in order to find a job afterwards is something that is top of your priority, then you organize and prioritize the things on offer accordingly. So that's what I would say. There's no one answer to that, but you definitely can juggle things whilst you're there.
Well, that's brilliant. And how did your college influence your MBA experience?
So St. Hugh's College, we had quite a number of MBAs in the college itself. I think there must have been over 30 of us that were part of St. Hugh's. And I really enjoyed my college experience because I stayed in college, which was great. So I had the opportunity to use the college library. I loved the Howard Piper Library at St. Hugh's. So for those of you who are there, please go and check it out. I perhaps didn't engage in some of the core college activities as much as other people did, because I sort of prioritized doing things with the business school or my classmates in that space. And that's part of the trade-offs that you'll make. There are some people who are quite active in college activities. We certainly had lots of events that I try to attend as many as possible. So the Middle Common Room, which is sort of the graduate body, there's a space in every college called the Middle Common Room. Lots of social events that happen, breakfasts, things like that. And so I try to participate in as many of those as possible. But certainly the bulk of my activities were focused with the business school and my cohort there. I will say, however, that your college is a fantastic opportunity to be able to get perspectives outside of just the business school, because as your formal association with the university is through the college. And you get exposure to people from completely different disciplines. So like I was saying, during the formal dinners, but you have the opportunity to engage with people from different courses, different areas of expertise. So I certainly think that when you head to Oxford and you get into your college, research a little bit and see if there's something in there that you might want to explore a bit more in your college.
Oh, brilliant. And we've had a couple of questions come in on how do you keep track of the events that are going on campus, for instance, the speakers, the dinners, what platforms do you use, or the websites? How do you keep track of that as a student?
Very nice. I'm not sure if things have evolved since, but we had a very active chat group in our class. Like we used Telegram, and if things were going on, people often shared it there. But you also get when you get to Oxford, you can sign up. I think it's called Freshers Week, where you get the opportunity to sign up to a whole bunch of clubs. I remember in my first week, I signed up to something like 20 different platforms, and then by week 3, you like unsubscribe from all of them because it's just like I can't manage to get everywhere. But certainly, you know, the Oxford Union schedule, you'll get emails, so you'll receive that as a member of the Oxford Union. But stay in touch with your classmates. So there'll be things that are shared within the Oxford Said platforms where the school is hosting events, and you'll be very well aware of that. But if there's an area, so for example, if you have a particular interest in the humanities, reach out to that department, that area, that school, so maybe the Martin School for Science, whatever the case is, and see if you can be added onto a mailing list so that you get a sense of what's going on. Or you could proactively go onto their websites and see what's happening. But yeah, the word of mouth through our chat groups was a very effective way of knowing what's going on.
Oh, brilliant. And what do you wish you had known before joining Said, Nabilah?
And I feel like I didn't necessarily have I didn't want to create expectations of what the experience was going to be. So I sort of just went in there with an open mind, you know, to experience it. But I think maybe to some extent, it would have been great to know how intense the experience would be. Not to say that, you know, not knowing it was problematic, but it, you know, you have to manage your energy and manage you know, how you cope with things as you go all the way through, and think about what you want to prioritize. So I remember, for example, in the first, I think it was in the first term when everyone was signing up for labs, you know, there's this intense FOMO of thinking, oh, I need to sign up for the consulting lab and the finance lab. And, you know, you almost need to take a step back and say, but what am I actually here for? And what is the path that I'm following? And if your path doesn't necessarily align for you signing up to one of the labs, it's absolutely fine, and you can be okay with that. So I think maybe it's the saying, you know, cut yourself some slack. And at the outset, and you know, for those of you who are heading into to the class in September this year, think about what you want to get out of this experience professionally, socially, you know, otherwise, and let that be your guide as you navigate the choices that come at you, because there's a lot of choices and opportunities that come at you. So maybe, yeah, the idea of, you know, just cutting yourself a bit of slack and knowing that, you know, you don't have to sign up and do everything. It's absolutely okay to say no.
And another question here about electives. How did the electives that you took shape your perspective? Did you have any particular favorites?
Yes, I did. So some of the courses that I really enjoyed, of course, Responsible Business, which is one of the integrative courses. So it's one of those cross-cutting themes. I really enjoyed the Responsible Business classes. At the time it was called the Responsible Business Forum, but it's now referred to as the Economics of Mutuality Forum, which Professor Colin Mayer heads up. I really found that to be extremely helpful in shaping a lot of the thoughts that I have now, you know, in the way I think about responsible business, and it directly relates to the work that I do currently. I also really enjoyed the class on business strategy and politics. At the time we had Professor Jan-Emmanuel Deneve who ran that class, and it was just a really interesting way about thinking, not just about the market environment, which is something that through the business school education, you'll get a lot of perspective into, like customer, suppliers, competitors, but this focused on the non-market environment and talked about how that shapes the way a business operates and a business runs. And it was the most fascinating thing, because you don't have to be in politics to appreciate that. It's, you know, existing within the business world, you need to be aware of the different forces at play. So that was certainly another favorite. I really like the Africa electives. I have such a long list, but I'm going to try and curtail for the purposes of the discussion. Really enjoyed the Africa electives. I did both of them. There was the elective that happened in Johannesburg, as well as a class that happened over the summer. It was really insightful. Even as a South African, I found that very beneficial to get, you know, broader context of doing business in Africa. And the other one that I'd like to highlight, I actually didn't take this class, but it was, I audited one of the classes. It was called Leadership with the Humanities, or in the Humanities. And it was the most interesting class and course because it looked at principles from the humanities and related that to leadership. And it was probably one of those things that you have to be in Oxford to be able to have a course like this. So the class that I joined for was when they were looking at how architecture influences leadership. And literally the class was walking through Oxford and looking at some of the amazing architecture and buildings and how leadership dynamics and power essentially shaped the way that these buildings were formed. And I really enjoyed that. And I know many of my friends who took the class have ranked that very highly as being one of the top classes. That's definitely a regret that I have not taken that class.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Nabilah. And a quick question around how would you advise someone who's preparing to start for the course? How would you advise them to access resources and kind of hit the ground running so they can kind of enter the course and get stuck in? What did you kind of do through the summer period?
We had some prep courses, like Wall Street prep courses that were on offer that you could do if you perhaps don't have a finance or an accounting or a business background. But honestly, I feel like what I probably think is the most helpful thing to do in the run up to the MBA is just to clear in your mind what you want to get out of the experience. And I know that sounds like maybe a bit wishy-washy because the question is very directed about preparing for the coursework. But the reality is that the actual the courses are designed such that you don't have to be an expert in the area in order to go through it. So it builds up the knowledge base quite quickly. If I think about, for example, I'm a chartered accountant by background, but the accounting class started from the very basics and then built it up. So even if you were a so-called expert in accounting, you still had a lot of benefit from the insights that were shared. But I'd also say that don't feel like you're in this on your own. You have an amazing class that you will probably already have a chance to get to know. But lean on your classmates. So I tutored a couple of friends in accounting, and then reached out to some of my consulting friends, for perspectives on strategy assignments, for example. So you really want to leverage the expertise and the variety of expertise that sits within that space. So I don't. My personal advice would be not to, really stress yourself out on the core content, but really rather use the time to clarify in your mind the direction that you want to go into, and maybe start thinking about if you have a career move that you want to make or pivoting from that perspective, rather do that kind of research so that once you're in Oxford, the kind of spaces that you want to proactively get yourself into, the kinds of people who you want to network with, more than preparing from a course material perspective.
Thank you for that. A question here from Jonathan regarding accommodation. What was your accommodation like, Nabilah?
So I stayed in college accommodation in St. Hugh's. I had a really nice room, I have to say. So for those of you who've been looking at where everything is spaced out, you'll know that St. Hugh's is a little bit further out than the other colleges. But if you have a bike or are keen to take a bit of a longish walk or hop into a bus, you get into the city center fairly quickly. So my accommodation was based in the Dixon Poon China Center in St. Hugh's College, and it was beautiful. Had my own room, and I also had my own bathroom, which was a bit of a non-negotiable for me when I was looking at accommodation. So if I have to give you advice in terms of looking for accommodation, I would say, be clear on what your non-negotiables are and try and get onto the accommodation search as early as possible. I personally think college or university accommodation is first prize because it's a lot more reasonably priced. And also, if you are based outside of the UK and are trying to look at private accommodation, there are all sorts of other complications that you have to think about for renting a property, and also, trying to get into an accommodation, sharing it with other people that you don't know. So certainly, if you are able to get college accommodation, that would be first prize. And it's also a lot of fun because you're then based in the core of where the activity is happening within your college. And I loved the fact that I was based in my college itself.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. A couple of questions have come in about the entrepreneurship project. So in terms of the time commitment, how much time did you commit to that project, Nabilah?
So our EP ran from probably a little bit towards the end of Michaelmas into our Hillary term. And it was, I can't say exactly how many hours we spent on it, but it was a longer term project, and so you worked on it consistently, over the weeks. Especially towards the second, I remember coming back after the Christmas holidays, we spent a lot more time trying to put our ideas together. I really loved my entrepreneurship team, and they're some of my closest friends from the MBA that, afterwards. And, it didn't feel like work as we were working through it, because, everyone was just worked so well together and got along so well. But I think in terms of the time commitment, it will be depending on how robust you want your product to be at the end, and hopefully it would be something that you can learn from. I would suggest working on it consistently through the period. And I'm not sure if over the course of the current course structure, whether the EP term has changed, but it was a couple of months for us where we had the opportunity to sort of work and tinker away on it over time. What was also great was that there were opportunities to check in. So you weren't just left to do your own thing for a couple of months. You were guided through the process in terms of what you should be looking for, and people that you should be speaking to, that kind of thing. So that definitely helps in directing your efforts.
And for those who've joined today who are not familiar with the project, how was your team formed, and how did you come up with the idea as well? If you could just provide a brief overview.
Yeah, so we had the opportunity to either pitch ideas, or you'll be listening to pitches being made. So there was a day where everyone went into the auditorium and heard the pitches or made pitches, and my teammate Dr. Chris Matthews, he pitched the idea of the pink bus. So he is a doctor from South Africa, and he had this idea of wanting to create some sort of a mobile clinic that addresses female reproductive issues in South Africa. And he pitched this idea, and whoever was interested in a given idea, you would apply to the person who pitched it to say, I'd like to join your team, and this is what I think I can bring to it. And so that's essentially how our team was formed. A whole bunch of us, sort of reached out and said we were interested, and he eventually formed the team based on, the different expertise that people were bringing in, and that's how we got our team. And if you had an idea, you could stand up and share it and create a team from there. There were some ideas, I believe, that, because it was a hypothetical thing that we put together. We didn't sort of activate or implement the idea afterwards, but there were people who took the ideas, post the MBA to create something. So certainly I would say that don't feel like, you have to have something in real life. It can be a learning experience of understanding what it will take to create a venture. But if you have an idea and you're incubating an idea, that would be a fantastic thing to bring to the MBA and perhaps pitch, for an entrepreneurship project.
Oh, thank you for that, Nabilah. That's really helpful. We have a question from David. Did you ever find yourself overwhelmed with the coursework and the job hunt throughout your experience, and how did you handle the stress? Do you have any advice?
Wow. It is rigorous, and yes, there were times when it felt overwhelming, but I will say that I never felt like I was sort of alone in the struggle. And I'm going to go back to the point that I made earlier about leaning on your classmates for support. So there were many nights where you spent long nights in the library, but quite often you weren't doing it alone. You had like your friends around you, and you were all working, tinkering away at a strategy assignment or whatever the case is. I tried as far as possible to balance that. So, it would be a crying shame to spend all of your time in the library. So I really am appealing to everyone, get out there and explore and make your experience more than just the academics, because there's a lot more on offer as well. You've got to put in the time. I'm not going to take away from that. It is a rigorous course. But with the support of your classmates as well as the faculty, it really is, it's very manageable. On the point of the job hunt, in my case, I wasn't actively looking looking for a new employer, because I stayed on with my current employer at the time. But I would say that for those people and friends of mine who were actively, looking for jobs or on the career hunt, you've got to prioritize that as well. And that's where this idea of what you want to get out of the MBA becomes very important. So if the job hunt is something that is important, you need to get a sense of, if you want to, for example, apply into consulting, what are the timelines that I need to be thinking about? And if those deadlines are earlier in the year, that's what you're going to have to prioritize and manage your time accordingly and manage your energy accordingly so that, you're able to get to everything and not burn out.
Oh, and that actually leads me into another question. What did your weekends look like, Nabilah?
Well, cheapest. They were all very different, but all of them were spent having a fantastic time with friends and trying to explore the different things that Oxford had on offer. So as far as possible, if you can get your coursework done during the week, then you do so. Catch up on whatever bits you have to during the weekend, particularly if you need to read up on case studies. It's always good to be able to do prep beforehand just so that you can engage in the content. But there's so much on offer, from a downtime perspective in Oxford, even if it's just like, I'm a huge nature lover. So I loved, walking through the gardens or, going off, checking out the botanical gardens, whatever else it was, or just meeting up with friends. And we did a lot of activities together. And yeah, there's a handful of times that I can count where I spent my days absolutely alone. I'm also extroverted by nature, so that worked for me quite well. But you'll find your tribe when you're in the MBA, and absolutely. And I would say make it a big tribe, so that you have the opportunity to interact with as many people as possible.
Oh, thank you. That's brilliant. And we'll just take a couple more questions, Nabilah, because I realise you're going to have a really sore throat after this because we've been firing away. Could you tell us a little bit more about how, outside of the MBA, how you met with people in the wider University of Oxford community and the relationships you have with those people?
Right. So outside of the business school itself, I mean, you'll have opportunities through your college. That's probably the easiest point of interaction and contact. But then also, there are other societies, so that they're like wider societies that you can be a part of. So for example, there's an Africa society, there's there are other societies that you can look to, to be able to engage with people with common interests, because I think that's the other element that you've got to consider. I was also part of I received the Chevening Scholarship when I studied, so I had the opportunity of meeting other Chevening scholars based in Oxford, which was great. And I would also say that, take advantage of things like events and fora that are held across the university to be able to network and meet other people. So for example, I attended a couple of events at the Blavatnik School of Government. And it was quite interesting you get different perspectives, but if you wanted to proactively network within a space like that, attending events would, allow you to be able to make contact and reach out to other people there as well. It's very much a proactive, self-driven thing. My networks were largely concentrated within the business school, and that's an active choice that I made just because of my interest, particularly within the responsible business space, lay in that within the business school. And it was great. If I think about connections that I made outside of the people who were based in the business school, events like the Economics of Mutuality Forum, for example, is a fantastic way of being able to reach out to a wider base. There are people who come from outside of Oxford as well, to attend these events, and then you get an opportunity to network. Also, I have to mention that the Business Africa Forum was a fantastic opportunity to network as well. Particularly as a professional coming from Africa, I really enjoyed that event. I had the opportunity to meet people who I otherwise wouldn't have met even here in South Africa, and I still have kept in contact with since.
Oh, that's brilliant. I think we may have covered most of these now, so let me just do one last check.
Fantastic. Great to get all these questions. I can see everyone is hopefully excited, for what's to come.
We do have one question from Sarin, and I think you'll really kind of want to speak to this. So if we end on this question, Nabilah, could you share a little bit more about your experiences in Africa during your time at SBS, the length, content, preparation, visit, etc. So if we could just briefly, because I know.
Right, we're at time. Sure. So The Africa, so this would refer to the Africa elective, if I understand correctly. Yeah. So the Africa elective was 1 week and it happened in Johannesburg. The course was done at the time by Professor Mthuli Ncube. Fantastic course curriculum where we have the opportunity to meet with different businesses in Africa, have different speakers coming to us, and it was based here in Johannesburg. So you have the opportunity to be, it's a study abroad, I wouldn't say study abroad, but an off-location sort of experience outside of Oxford. And yeah, so it was really enriching because it was very practical. We had a lot of case studies. Our assignment was case study based as well. Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to answer other questions on that. I know we're short on time now, but if you have other specific questions, happy to chat with over LinkedIn or whatnot, and I can share perhaps more insights if you're particularly interested in it.
Oh, thank you so much, Nabilah. We'll get some links posted in the chat as well regarding that too. I suppose if we could just end on one thing, what would your advice be for those considering their place now and hoping to join us? What advice would you like to leave them with today?
Right. Well, I believe in really listening to what resonates with you. And, if you're considering whether Oxford is the right fit for you, for me, it's a question of looking at, every business school is known for something. What really drew me to Oxford Said was, the big focus on responsible business, the diversity element of it, and, just being part of a space where there's thought that happens beyond just the business school. So I would say that if you're currently looking at different opportunities or options in terms of where you do your MBA, think about what resonates with you, because that is where you'll find your fit. So, I never say that this is definitely the right place for you, because it has to resonate with you authentically. You're spending a year of your life there. What I can say is that personally, it was the most transformative year of my life. And I am reaping the benefit of it, years later. So certainly just think about what you want to get out of the experience and see, which business school or which course really speaks to you from that perspective. And yeah, I really hope that you will consider the Oxford MBA, because it is a wonderful experience.
Oh, thank you so much, Nabilah. And thank you everyone for all your questions. We've had some great questions come in. I hope you found the session valuable. Really appreciate how much time and content you've given us, Nabilah. So thank you so much once again. We do have a Q&A session running at 3 p.m. So if you have any further questions that we didn't get a chance to answer today or might not have been tailored towards this session, please join that session. This session will be recorded as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.